States file lawsuit against Biden admin to halt vaccine mandate for federal contractors. A coalition of more than 10 U.S. attorneys general announced a lawsuit against the Biden administration in an attempt to halt COVID-19 vaccine mandates for federal contractors and federally contracted employees. The lawsuit, led by Missouri Attorney General Eric Schmidt, argues that the mandate goes against the Procurement Act, citing 12 counts of violations. Far from increasing economy and efficiency in procurement, the contractor vaccine mandate will have deleterious effects on economy and inefficiency by causing the large-scale resignations of unvaccinated employees of federal contractors. The lawsuit states, the lawsuit also claims that the mandate imposed on federal workers through Executive Order 14,042 from President Biden is unconstitutional. Defendants, through their vaccine mandate, have exercised power far beyond what was delegated to the federal government by constitutional mandate or congressional action. The suit states, neither Article 2 of the U.S. Constitution nor any act of Congress authorizes defendants to implement their vaccine mandate. The power to impose vaccine mandates, to the extent that any such power exists, is a power reserved to the states. We're leading the nation in fighting back against this absurd federal overreach, Schmidt said in a statement. According to the U.S. Department of Labor, workers who are employed by a federal contractor make up 1/5 of the entire labor market. If the federal government attempts to unconstitutionally exert its will and force federal contractors to mandate vaccinations, the workforce and businesses could be decimated, further exacerbating the supply chain and workforce crises. The lawsuit requests that the court declare the vaccine mandate unlawful and urges the defendants against enforcing it. States that have joined the lawsuit include Missouri, Nebraska, Alaska, Arkansas, Iowa, Montana, New Hampshire, North Dakota, South Dakota, and Wyoming. Republicans demand answers from Biden cabinet on reported payments to illegal immigrants. Horrific decision. First on Fox, dozens of House Republicans are sending a letter to 3 of President Biden's cabinet secretaries regarding reports that their agencies are in talks to give illegal immigrants separated at the border under the previous administration $450,000 each. The Republicans are demanding answers from Department of Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas, Health and Human Services Secretary Xavier Becerra, and Attorney General Merrick Garland. 45 House Republicans, including House Minority Whip Steve Scalise of Louisiana, GOP Caucus Chair Rep. Elise Stefanik of New York and Texas Rep. Dan Crenshaw, have signed onto the letter, which is led by North Carolina Rep. Greg Murphy. In the letter, the Republicans outline their severe concerns over reports that the agencies are considering paying $450,000 to illegal immigrants separated at the border under the Trump administration. The rationale for this egregious abuse of taxpayer dollars is to compensate these persons for lasting psychological trauma, the lawmakers wrote in the letter obtained by Fox News. Do, however, note that these persons crossed into our country in a knowingly illegal manner, fully aware of the consequences of violating our rule of law. Promising tens of thousands of dollars to those who unlawfully entered the United States would not only reward criminal behavior, but it would surely send a message to the world that our borders are open and our rule of law will not be enforced. The letter also reads, the lawmakers charge that the Biden administration has been incentivizing illegal immigration since its first day in office when he struck several Trump-era border policies, which the lawmakers wrote has led to the worst self-inflicted border crisis in history. Murphy and his colleagues also warned that if the Biden administration decides to pay the hundreds of thousands of dollars in taxpayer money to thousands of illegal immigrants, the administration will unilaterally incentivize migrants from more than 150 nations across the world to surge our border. Compare this hefty compensation sum to the 2019 average median American household annual income of $68,703, they wrote. Furthermore, compare it to the maximum payout from a SGLI life insurance policy for military members, which is $400,000, at a time when the American household is dealing with historic rates of inflation and the price of average consumer goods. Groceries, gasoline, and heating have risen exponentially. It's shocking that our government is considering rewarding illegal activity for purely political reasons. The Republicans also wrote, why is this potential compensation for families separated in 2018 under the previous administration and not those separated between 2008 to 2016 or since 2021? The lawmakers posited. The lawmakers concluded the letter by calling on the secretaries to reconsider their horrific decision and rescind any potential action to this effect, as well as demanding answers on the NT Department talks as soon as humanly possible. We are more than able to meet to discuss this urgent travesty, they wrote. The Wall Street Journal reported on Thursday that the 3 agencies were in talks to make the payments to the illegal immigrants. The Journal stated the Departments of Justice, Homeland Security, and Health and Human Services are considering payments that could amount to close to $1 million a family, though final payment amounts could change as some families would likely get smaller payouts. depending on their circumstances. The sources also told the Journal that around 940 claims have been filed by immigrant families who were separated at the border. RSC memo outlines 31 policies in massive Dem spending bill that will wreck America. House Republicans are warning of 31 policies in the Democratic reconciliation package that they say will wreck America after Democrats released a draft of the enormous spending bill they are hoping to get through Congress without Republican support. Now we have new bill text, and we wanted to give you an update on what's in and what's out. The memo by the Republican Study Committee Chairman Rep. Jim Banks, RN, says because it's not about the top-line price tag, it's about the underlying policies within the bill, and there are 31 devastating policies that would wreck America still left in the Democrats' reconciliation package. It says the memo had previously outlined 42 policies Republicans objected to in the initial draft of the bill, but as Democrats negotiate among themselves to try and get a package that can get the approval of both moderates and progressives to overcome their razor-thin margins in both chambers. That list has been trimmed. The memo highlights that policies that promote the Green New Deal in schools, give greater power to unions, and further what they call Democrats' social justice agenda are out. Also gone is language that would waive a number of grounds for immigration inadmissibility. Additionally, paid parental leave, a capital gains tax increase, and healthcare provisions are all gone in the new trimmed version of the bill. But the Republicans say there is still plenty to wreck the country in the legislation that could see a vote in the coming days. The memo claims the draft bill, known as the Build Back Better Act, will perpetuate the labor shortage by allowing welfare benefits without work requirements for able-bodied adults, will increase taxes and lower wages for working families. The White House has claimed that it will not raise taxes of any person making less than $400,000 a year. The bill's trillions of dollars in tax hikes will be felt by those making under $400,000 per year. Contrary to what the White House says, Banks argues in the memo, individuals at all income levels will be affected. On the environment, the memo says the bill will punish red states for failing to adopt provisions in the Green New Deal, drive up utility bills with taxes on natural gas, and fund a $10 billion environmental justice program in college that Republicans call a slush fund to indoctrinate college students and advance Green New Deal priorities. It also highlights $5 billion for environmental and climate justice block grants. On immigration, the memo notes that a mass amnesty program to give a pathway to citizenship for millions of illegal immigrants is still in the bill, as is a program to make illegal immigrants eligible for student aid and tax credits. While programs to recapture green cards from past years are also still present, while Democrats are seeking to pass the bill via a combination of its slim House majority and the reconciliation process in the Senate, meaning no GOP votes are needed, the memo urges Republicans to be loud and bold in opposing the legislation. This isn't legislating, it's looting, the memo says, and working-class Americans are the ones they're stealing from as their defenders in Congress. We need to use the platform they've afforded to us to embarrass and shame them for what they're doing to this country. Biden, Pelosi, Schumer fueling Youngkin surge in Virginia showdown, conservative leader says. Exclusive, the political arm of Americans for Prosperity, the powerful conservative and libertarian political advocacy group, is putting on a full-court press to get out the vote in next week's gubernatorial showdown in Virginia, an election with plenty of national implications ahead of next year's midterm elections. And the head of AFP, who is leading the group's charge in the Commonwealth, says that the shocking and eye-opening moves by President Biden and the Democrats who control Congress have been fueling the rise in support for GOP gubernatorial nominee Glenn Youngkin, as he faces off Tuesday against former Democratic Gov. Terry McAuliffe. While the Youngkin and McAuliffe campaigns, as well as super PACs and other outside groups, have shelled out big bucks to flood the airwaves in the final stretch ahead of Election Day, Americans for Prosperity Action is knocking on doors across the state to make sure conservative voters will cast ballots and to try and persuade swing voters. Longtime AFP President Tim Phillips told Fox News on Friday in an exclusive interview that they've got well over 100 people deployed here from our best field staff across the country, and they're joining our permanent staff in Virginia and a large number of volunteers. Phillips said his team is concentrating on two groups of people. One is people we're confident if they vote, they'll vote for Glenn Youngkin, but they're infrequent voters. Especially in these off-year elections, it's more of a persuasion to make sure they vote. He said the second group, located mostly in the suburbs, are swing voters who haven't voted yet in early balloting, but are going to vote. Their vote history is across the board for them. With them, it's about doing the last-minute persuasion that Glenn Youngkin is a guy they can feel comfortable with and trust and be proud to vote for. Virginia and New Jersey are the only two states to hold gubernatorial contests in the year after a presidential election. ensuring they get outsized attention from coast to coast. And there's a long-running trend of voters in the Commonwealth defeating the gubernatorial nominee of the party that controls the White House. McAuliffe broke with that tradition in 2013 with his election as governor in the year after President Barack Obama was re-elected. McAuliffe was unable to run for re-election in 2017 because Virginia governors are barred from serving 2 straight terms. While New Jersey is a predominantly blue state, Virginia remains very competitive and is seen as a key bellwether ahead of the 2022 midterm elections. The close contest for governor has national Democrats on edge as they defend their razor-thin majorities in the House of Representatives and Senate in next year's contest. If Youngkin defeats McAuliffe, there will be a surge in Democratic anxiety regarding their fate in the midterms. A Fox News poll in Virginia conducted this week indicates Youngkin holding an 8-point lead over McAuliffe. The other 5 most recent polls indicate the race is deadlocked or virtually tied between the 2 candidates. Phillips and his AFP team spent a couple of weeks in Georgia at the end of last year and at the beginning of January. In a similar get-out-the-vote effort in the Peach State's twin Senate runoffs, the Democrats narrowly swept both of those elections, giving them the majority in the Senate. Ask the difference between then and now, when virtually every poll indicates a GOP edge and enthusiasm in Virginia. Phillips pointed to 2 differences: these swing voters and infrequent conservative and Republican voters. They now have seen 9 months of Biden, Schumer, Pelosi control and what it can do with regard to inflation, with regard to their schools, with regard to how this country is being run, this top-down, almost socialistic approach. I think it's been shocking and eye-opening to them. That's the biggest difference, Phillips argued, and he added that the second difference is Glenn Youngkin is someone with a great vision. He's not a politician. He's a business person. He's not a caricature of some Republican candidate that they don't like. Phillips, who lives in Northern Virginia's Loudoun County, stressed that in this election, the state of K-12 education is probably the most important issue along with inflation. That inflation issue is eating at Virginians and Americans. They feel it across the board. He predicted that those are the twin issues that will propel Youngkin to victory on Tuesday. Polls indicate that former President Donald Trump, who lost the Commonwealth by 10 points to Biden in last November's presidential election, remains unpopular in the state with a majority of voters, and McAuliffe has made linking Youngkin to Trump a key part of his campaign strategy. But Phillips argued that I don't think the former president has played much of a role in the race. He charged that McAuliffe's strategy, I think it just sounds tone-deaf to a lot of Virginians I'm talking to. They're talking about inflation. They're looking at a meltdown in their public schools. And here's a guy talking about the last president of the United States, who isn't in office anymore. It just sounds tone-deaf to people and where they are in their everyday lives.